What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a little refresh on the RSF 650. If you guys have been here with me for a while, you remember not too long ago I did a cheap light kit video. I got about 11,000 views. Today I'm going to be tearing that light kit apart and getting rid of the old crappy harness and rewiring it to build our own light kit, and I'm going to be taking you along with to show you how I did it. So let me show you what we got here. Hopefully the lighting's not too bad. It's a cloudy day out here in Florida. So what we're going to be doing is hooking up a 72 volt to 48 volt down to a 12 volt reducer. We have a little fuse panel, a little power brick, and I'm going to be attaching it to my ETM kit with my 48 volt battery. Now this will work with any controller. All we're doing is robbing power from the positive and negative posts. I'm going to be showing you how to make your own little harnesses with our waterproof connectors. The nice thing about this is I only used a few tools and a crimper. We got a little terminal set from Harbor Freight. I think this was only like $8. I think these are like 20-30 bucks with the crimpers. And I have a key switch that I've already modified into the old panel for the RSF. So we are going to be switching from on and off switch from the ETM kit to a key switch. And this reducer actually has a wire for a key switch as well. So that way when you turn the bike off, all the lights will shut off with the reducer, and you have to turn the bike on to get power to all your lights. So pretty sweet. If you forget to leave a light on or shut a light off and you shut your bike off, everything goes with it. So it's pretty nice. So yeah, we got all this. So here is the old light kit that I used. If you guys remember that video, it was cheap, like 20 bucks off of AliExpress. I'll put a link for everything you see here in the description. And then we have this new light right here from Colite. This is kind of a sneak peek. I'll be doing a review video for this. They were kind enough to send me a pair of these. So look forward to a video of that coming up soon. Should have a discount code for you guys and everything. But yeah, guys, so let me go ahead and take all this stuff apart. That way we can go step by step. We'll start with the reducer, hooking that up, hooking it up to our power block, and then from there we'll just start attaching things one by one. All right, guys. One more thing before we get started. I also wanted to mention that I will be using these buttons here as well, or these switches with the LED indicators on them. They're pretty cool. I got like a pack of 5 for, it was like 10 bucks maybe on Amazon. And then I went ahead and I 3M mounted the reducer, and then I found some screws, went into the back side, and they actually threaded up through that. Of course, I had to make sure that I was not interfering with my triangles here, so the bolts end up right underneath the triangles. So just a quick show of how I am mounting all of this stuff. It should fit nice and neat inside of the RSF's tank. You can see over there. So yeah, let's get started. We're going to mount the, we're going to wire the reducer, and we're going to wire the fuse block. So once you get your reducer, you'll notice it comes with this harness right here that connects to itself right here. Now you'll notice, let's see if we can focus better. Focus. It says it right on there. Yellow is output positive, black is output negative, which is going to be your 12 volt. The thin black is going to be your input, and your red is going to be your input, positive. So thin black and red is going to be from your battery, and then the thin red, we're going to be splicing that into our key switch, so that way this reducer will turn on and off when we turn our controller on and off, or our bike. So now that we have all of our wires figured out, what we need to do is we need to come to our main harness off of the reducer, and obviously we need to figure out what we have. So first thing I did is, this is going to be our 12 volt distribution block. So we have our yellow output positive on our positive of our block, and our negative on our negative. So those two wires are figured out. Next thing we need to do is get our inputs. So we got our thick red and our skinny black. So what we're going to need to do is attach these to our controller posts. That way we can rob 48 volts from the controller into the reducer and then back into the fuse block. Alright, so that's simple enough. As soon as I cut away here, I'll go ahead and attach these. And then our next one, we're going to be using this thin red, excuse me, to get our key switch. So that's going to be pretty simple. I've shown these before, and I suggest familiarizing yourself, practicing pinning a few wires. I see a lot of people make mistakes. So this is how you want to do it. But basically, you're going to have that first crimp point is going to go around your rubber seal, and then a second crimp point is going to be for the actual copper wire. So you want to make sure you get that so it's hanging on, and when you push it up into the connector, that this rubber seal holds on nice and tight, and that is what's going to make it waterproof. So yeah, what I ended up doing is using my single waterproof connector, single pin, and then we'll go over here to our key switch. So this is very simple. All I did was cut my two wires for my key switch, and when I was pinning it, I did my red, which comes straight from the controller positive. So this red will always be hot. It'll always have 48 volts. And then once it comes back up into the key, once you turn the key on, it sends 48 volts down to this black. And this black is what's going to turn your controller on. So that's a normal any controller kit you get, you're going to have an on and off switch, and that's all it does, is it sends 48 volt signal through the key switch back into the controller to turn it on. Now what I did here is I pinned two wires into that one pin. So now once I hit the key switch and get 48 volt signal, I'm robbing that 48 volts through this wire right here, which in turn is going to get connected into the reducer, turning it on. So that should be pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Let me go ahead and get all of this connected off camera real quick, and then I will show you guys that we now have 12 volts with a key on. Alright, you guys, now you can see I have everything plugged in as far as the reducer and the block with the key switch. As you can see, I got 0 volts when I put my probes up to my 12 volt power. And what I'm going to be doing is just flipping my key switch on, and there we go, we have 12 volts. Key switch off, and there goes that 12 volts. So the lights will shut off with the key switch, which in turn is also turning the controller on. So it's pretty fancy how that works out. Now the biggest advice that I can give anyone doing wiring or hesitant to do wiring is take it one step at a time, do one light at a time. Try to get everything finished that you're done with. Try to get it tucked away, out of sight, out of mind, because once it turns into a bunch of spaghetti noodles, it starts getting pretty intimidating and confusing. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started with some of our main features. So this right here that comes with the cheap light kit has a running light, a brake light, and built-in blinkers. So this one, we are automatically going to get to the end of it, and we're going to go ahead and pin all of these wires to a connector. So if you have 6 wires, you get a 6-pin connector, wire them all in. That's going to be our starting point. From there, we will build off of this, and then same thing, we're going to have our bar control. Now this is what's going to send power to all of your functions, like your light, your blinkers. We also have a horn on it. So you're going to go ahead and pin this as well. So basically we're going to be taking power from our 12 volts, putting it into our bar switches, and then back out into our lights. Alright guys, so first thing we're going to be starting off with is our handlebar switches. Now if you don't know what wire goes to what, you can always take your cover off and you can actually see which color wires are going to each thing. Now for this particular one right here, if you guys do decide to get this kit and follow me, you're going to have 5 wires. I left one open, that way later on I can do a full set of 4 blinkers and I can just rewire it to here. But on this one specifically, you're going to have your main power, which is going to feed power to your light, it's going to feed power to your blinkers, and it's going to feed power to your horn. Now we're going to have a white, which is going to be our headlight power. That's going to be the signal, so power will come up and then it'll come, once you flip your switch on, it'll come back out and go into your light and power it. And then you're going to have green and yellow, that's going to be your blinker left and right, and you're going to have black. So black is for horn, excuse me. So first thing we need to do is get power straight to this from our 12 volt reducer. So what you're going to need to do is get your other side of your connector, match it up. So now we know we need to get 12 volt power from this into this connector right here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut a short wire. Now you're gonna have to play with wire lengths depending on how you do your kit and how you tuck everything. So the first thing I did is I went and got a 520 piece terminal set, which is going to have terminals like this, going to have ring terminals, and then of course you're going to have your pin for your waterproof connector. So to get power to this, I need to go from my positive down here into, you'll have to excuse the loud noises out here, people ripping their cars. So what I'm going to do is from red to the other side of the connector, I'm going to go ahead and pin this. Now I'm going to wire this in. Excuse me, I'm going to screw this into one of my positives on my fuse block. And then we'll go ahead and screw that in. And by the way, make sure everything is off, just in case you don't want to short anything out. So now we're going to have power coming up and into my bar switch. Now we're going to need to get power back into our lights. So for myself, I'm going to be running my main headlight off a switch up front here. So what I'm going to do is use this light switch right here for my running light on my tail light. Now I already have my tail light pinned, so what we need to do is figure out what wires are going to what for your tail light. Now this one's going to have different colors. Again, if you need to, take the back of this apart and you can figure out what wires are going to what function. Alright, so on this one, we're going to have our main power again, so this is going to feed our running lights and our blinkers. So we got our main power for running light and blinkers, we got our blinker signal left and right, and then we're going to have a black. So once you get power to whatever you're powering, it's always got to come back to ground. So this is going to ground out our running lights, our blinkers, and that's it. And then you're going to have your blue and white. These are going to be a separate entity. These are going to be for your brake lights, and I'll show you how to hook those up later. But for right now, we just want to work on our bar switch for our running lights. So we need to get power to red. Okay, now as you can see, we started our connector right here, which is going to go from power in, and then we need to go from white back into a new connector for this other side, just like so. So we got our white is going to be our second pin here right next to this one. So we're going to pin that, and then again this is just bridging one connector to another. So we're just gonna bridge it like so. And then we got, make sure we do this right. And we got our red. So our white going bridge to our red. We have power running all the way through, and what we need to do now to get this light working is ground this out. So we have our ground bar right here. So what we're going to need to do is go from our black pin, we're going to follow that one over. It's the fourth one over, 1 2 3 4, and what I have here is another one. So this is going to go in here just like this, and then it's going to ground into the pin just like so. So we'll go ahead and pin this real quick, and then we'll set this to our ground. Now ground, it doesn't matter which one you screw it into, they all go to the same place, so it's not a big deal. So now once I connect these two connectors, these connectors are almost impossible to do without putting their caps on. So now what I'm going to do, make sure everything is off, we're going to flip our switch. Now we have power running to our reducer into our block, and now I turn my light on, and it's probably super dim and you can't see that. Let's see. Kind of see it. We have 12 volt going to our running light off of our bar switch. Alright, so now we got that one finished. Let's go to our next one. We want to set up our blinkers. So we already have power, like I said, running to our main switch right here. So all we need to do is send those signal back into our blinkers, which is going to be our green and yellow. Green and yellow up top, green and yellow down here. So again, what we're going to need to do, shut everything off here, is we're going to bridge our green to our green. So same thing here. Go ahead and take these connectors off real quick. So our green is going to be our next pin right here, and then into our pin like so. And then we're going to grab another bridge wire, and we're going to connect our yellow. So our yellow is our next pin over. Go ahead and put that in, and put that in right here. Alright, and now that we are powered and we are grounded on our tail light, remember this grounds for everything on this side of the wire. So now when I plug everything back in, we should have power to our blinkers. Alright, let's give her a go. Lights, we got one blinker and we got the other blinker. Beautiful, so that's already two lights hooked up, three lights, excuse me. One running light and two blinkers. So let's put this off to the side. Get these unhooked. And now we'll go to our next thing. So now that we have our running light and our blinkers hooked up, we are going to move on to our last black wire right here, which is going to be our horn. Now you're going to want to, so in my specific case, I'll be using the old stock light from the kit. So I will be using switches to turn my lights on instead of using the button up here. So what I'm going to need to do is figure out which wires do what. So for my light, I have my light power and my ground, and then red is going to be my horn. Now again, black is going to ground all of this out, so eventually I'll need to find ground for this connector first. But let's get to the horn first. So what we're going to need to do from our connector, we're going to have black, so we need to connect to black. So what I did is I pinned one side for the connector, and then I made a single connector for my light harness. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pin this in here, and And now we have power coming up and then back out into the horn, which in turn is going to plug into my horn connector like so. So now we have power to our horn, and what we need to do now is find ground for it. So now that we are completely finished with the bar connectors themselves, we no longer need to worry about this side. Now from here we will do our brakes and get the tail light all finished up and wired together. So what we're going to need to do is make a ground for our blue, and then since we have two levers, we're going to need to make a split connector, or you can do a kind of like a pigtail. So what we need to do is we'll make a connector like so. So what I did was I made two wires going into one side of each 2-pin connector, spliced into one pin for my connector. And then what we have here is a power wire. So this power wire is going to come up, it's going to go into the brake, back down, and into the lights itself. So your brakes will act as that switch, and then you have two of them for each one, so it doesn't matter which one you press, the brake lights will go off. So let's make sure we got our blue is going to be power. It's always good to label your wires just in case you forget. So we got that connected, and now we need to put this into one of our 12-volt sources. So let me unscrew this one. I need to move that over. Plug that back in. And we got that done. Alright, so now we have our power side. Get rid of this mess real quick. We have our power side and our connectors ready to plug into our brake switches. You'll just have to wire your brake switch for the other side of the connector. Now what we need to do is ground out white, so that way our brakes work. So again, we're going to do another connector like this with a pin on one side and the fork terminal on the other side. We're going to plug this in to our white, and then we're going to swing this around and we're going to pop that into one of our grounds. Cool deal. Now once you connect these two together with your brake, it will shine your brake lights. So let's give that a try real quick. Boom. And also this will work separately from your on and offs of your lights, so no matter what, your brakes will work. You don't have to worry about turning your lights on. Alright, so I just got a little wire to loop it around. Need to plug everything in first. Derp. Plug in. Alright, now that we have everything pinned, touch these two together just like you would a brake switch, and you now have brakes. And then same with this connector, just runs right off of it. Now you have brakes. We'll turn this on. We got our running lights, hopefully you guys can see that, and you got your separate brakes. And we got our blinker and other blinker, and we are officially finished with our bar controls and our tail light. So now that we have all of that out of the way, next what we need to do is work on our switches back here. And we're going to connect our headlights and our other headlight from Colite, which has a bright and a low beam. So I'll actually be using two switches for this one for the lows and one for the brights. Alright, so let's get into these switches over here. Try to put this out of sight, out of mind, so we're only working over here. Alright, so with these connectors, let's see if you guys can see that. You're going to have 3 pins, 1, 2, 3, or 3 blades I should say, and you're going to have a ground, a load, which is what goes out to the light, and a supply, which is your 12-volt supply. And then once you have those hooked up and you turn it on, you'll have a little LED to let you know it's on. So now that we have 3 of them, we're going to need 1, 2, 3 grounds, and we're going to need 1, 2, 3 supplies. So we got 3 here. We need to bridge from 12 volt to our supply, 12 volt to supply, 12 volt to supply, and then we're going to need to ground 1, 2, 3. So for the grounds, they all go into the same place. So what I did here is I put 3 blade connectors and then one of our fork terminals. So once we do that, we'll put our fork terminal in just like so. And we'll get that ready. We'll do that last since they are the top ones and they'd be a little bit hard to get to the undersides. And then again, we have our blade connector with our fork terminal. So we'll be putting that in here and then bridging them down into the 12 volt. So we'll make sure our power is off. And we'll go ahead and do 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll go ahead and tuck these in here. Get all these loose. And then we'll go ahead and get them connected. Did make this a little tight. That's why proper planning is key with wiring. Makes it all nice and clean. And our last one right here. So we now have 12 volts to all 3 of our switches. It's nice and tucked away. Cool deal. So again, we got our grounds and we got our 12 volt. Now we just need our outputs to our lights. So here is my co-light LED pod lights, and we're going to have 3 wires. So again, we're going to have our ground, and then we're going to have our high beam and our low beam. So what we need to do is make a new connector. Go ahead and make a 3-pin connector. We're going to get our other side, and for this one, so we need to run our ground. So now we got our ground into our connector. Make sure I got the right pin. Just like so. And now we're going to need 2 powers. So I had them match up. We got my yellow will be in my 2nd pin. And we got a red in our 1st. All right, so now these are gonna swing around and go into our 1st switch and our 2nd switch. So go ahead and pop that in just like so. Nice and easy. Now we have our connector to go into our lights right here. It's really hard to get those without the little red caps on them, so I'll hang on for just a second. We still need to ground them all, but first we need to get our last light hooked up. So on our last light, which is the stock one from the cheap light kit, we already have our horn hooked up, and now we need to make a connector that goes from our ground and our positive, which will be our light. So same thing as this, we need to run another ground to a 2-pin connector and then another positive to our middle post, which is our load. So let me go ahead and make that up real quick. All right, so I believe this should be just about it. I went ahead and made my connectors for my stock light with the horn in it. We have our ground and our positive. So we got our ground right here and our positive. So we'll go to our connector and we're gonna have ground on 2. Now if you've used these, they got little numbers on them. So it kind of helps you match them up just in case you have it flipped around for some reason. Alright. And here's what I mean about the little caps on them. They actually help line up the pins, just like that. Alright guys, so going to go ahead and plug into our last switch into our load. And we're going to wrap this around and ground it out. And then last but not least, we'll finally ground out all of our switches, and that should do it. So go ahead, do one ground here, one ground here. And if you can tell, I have a long, medium, and small one. So that's just all part of routing your wires correctly. And we're all set. So let's go ahead and plug in our lights. I'm going ahead and cut so I can put all of my caps on my connectors. We'll get everything plugged in, kind of tuck it in real quick, and then I'll come back and show you it all working. Alright guys, we are officially hooked up, other than the brakes, which I will have to do once I get them on the bike, which isn't a big deal. But yeah, as you can see, my wire management isn't the best, but it's going to work. It's going to cover it up and be completely hidden, but let's give it a shot. So we got key switch on. Now we have 12-volt power. We got our running lights. Hopefully you guys can still see that. And we got our blinker, other blinker. We got our horn, and hopefully I don't blind you, but we'll go to our switches. We got our brights, got our running lights, we got our other backup lights, and then you can switch them all on at the same time, and we're running beautifully. Yeah guys, that's going to pretty much wrap up this video. Hopefully this all made sense. It's definitely hard to explain and keep it short, so this video is probably going to end up pretty long. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I'll do my best to help you out, and hopefully this video helps you guys out. Alright guys, until next time, peace.